The air in the makeshift hospital was thick with antiseptic and despair. Dust motes danced in thin shafts of light cutting through the gloom. Every cot held a soldier, each lost in pain or fading memories of home. The sounds were a symphony of suffering, soft moans, gritted teeth, sharp cries. This was a place where hope often came to die. But then, there was Lucia. Lucia moved like a gentle breeze through the suffering. She was a nurse, but more than that. Her voice was a soft melody in the harshness of war. Her eyes held a deep kindness, a healing light. She saw past the wounds to the men beneath. She didn't rush, she took her time with each soldier. A touch on the arm, a word of comfort, a small, reassuring smile. She was their anchor in a sea of uncertainty. A natural scent of jasmine clung to her, a whisper of spring in the dead of winter. The soldiers noticed. It was a scent of life, of peace. It reminded them of gardens, quiet evenings, a world they fought to protect. Lucia tended to all with equal care, her compassion boundless. She cleaned wounds with gentle hands, offered water to parched lips, listened to fevered ramblings. She wrote letters for those who could not. But for one soldier her presence became something more, something vital. He watched her from his cot, saw the light she brought into the dim ward. He felt a pull, a silent call, a hope he thought was long extinguished. He was broken, his body a map of the war's cruelty. Shrapnel had torn through him, leaving him weak and scarred. Pain was his constant companion, throbbing with every heartbeat. It stole his sleep, clouded his thoughts. He lay there for days, or was it weeks? Time had lost its meaning. He was just another casualty, another forgotten name on a long list. He drifted in and out of consciousness, each awakening a fresh wave of agony. His spirit was as wounded as his flesh, despair a heavy cloak. He thought of home, of the life he might never return to. Fear was a cold knot in his stomach, loneliness his shadow. The faces around him were blurred, ghosts in his pain-filled haze. He had seen too much, lost too much. The will to fight, the will to live, was fading. He was close to letting go, so very close to surrendering to the darkness. Then Lucia came to his side. Her presence was a soft light pushing back the shadows. Her gentle touch on his forehead was cool, a relief. Her voice, when she spoke his name, was a lifeline. He clung to it, opened his eyes, really opened them. He saw her, saw the compassion in her gaze. She did not pity him, she saw him, the man, not just the wounds. And for the first time in a long time he felt a stirring. A tiny flicker of hope ignited within him. It was small, fragile, but it was there. Her quiet strength gave him strength. Her unwavering care made him feel human again. He started to fight, not against the enemy, but against the darkness within himself. He wanted to see her again, hear her voice, feel that gentle touch. Lucia became his reason to endure, his reason to try, his reason to hope. The days were long and filled with routine. The changing of dressings, the hushed conversations of doctors, the distant sounds of a world still at war. But it was the nights he began to live for. The ward would grow quiet, the pain seemed to lessen slightly in the stillness. And Lucia would come. She would make her rounds, but always lingered a little longer by his cot. Her presence was a comfort beyond measure, a silent promise that he was not alone. She began to speak to him, not just about his wounds or the medicine. She shared stories, little pieces of her life. She spoke of her childhood, a small village by the sea, running barefoot on the sand, the scent of pine trees in the summer. Her words painted pictures in his mind, vivid, beautiful. They were simple tales, tales of innocence, a world untouched by war, a world he longed to believe still existed. He listened, rapt, her stories a balm to his weary soul. They transported him away from the grim reality of the ward, away from the constant throb of his injuries. He saw the fields she described, felt the warmth of the sun on his skin, heard the laughter of children playing. Her voice was his guide, leading him to places of peace, places of beauty. These nightly conversations became his sanctuary, his escape, his most cherished moments. He found himself smiling, a real smile. Their connection grew with each shared whisper, each lingering glance. Sometimes her hand would brush his as she adjusted his pillow, a fleeting touch that sent a jolt through him. An unspoken language passed between them, a bond forged in the crucible of suffering and compassion. He saw a light in her eyes when she looked at him, a special light, and he knew he was falling in love with Lucia. His body began to heal, slowly, painfully, but it healed. The doctors spoke of recovery, of him eventually leaving the hospital. The thought should have filled him with joy, freedom, a return to life. But a new ache settled in his heart, the thought of leaving Lucia. It was a prospect more daunting than any battlefield. She had become his world, his reason, his everything. How could he walk away from the woman who had saved him, in more ways than one? One night, the air was unusually clear. Through the small window a few stars were visible, distant, hopeful. He gathered his courage, a different kind of courage than he needed in battle. This was the courage of the heart. He looked at Lucia, her face soft in the dim light. "Lucia," he began, his voice a little unsteady, "when this war is over, when I am whole again, I will come back for you." The words hung in the air, a solemn vow, a desperate plea. A single tear traced a path down Lucia's cheek, but she was smiling, a smile that reached her kind eyes. It was a smile of hope, a smile of shared dreams. She didn't speak for a moment, simply held his gaze. Then she nodded, a small, almost imperceptible movement. But it was enough, it was everything. "I will wait," she whispered, her voice barely audible. But he heard it, heard the promise in her tone, the promise of a future together. They held on to that moment, that promise. It became their secret treasure, a beacon to guide them through the remaining darkness. He would leave soon, return to the fight, but he would carry her with him. Her voice, her smile, the scent of jasmine, and the hope of a life together. A life after the war, a life where their love could finally bloom. Free from the shadows, free from the pain, they believed in it, with all their hearts. The war finally ended, the guns fell silent, a weary world rejoiced. He was far from Lucia, stationed in a distant land, but his heart was with her every single day. He wrote letters, page after page, pouring out his love, his hopes, his dreams for their future. He sent them to the hospital, to the village she had described, but no reply ever came. Silence met his desperate words, a heavy, unnerving silence. Doubt began to creep in, a cold fear. Then, a letter arrived, not in her delicate handwriting. The envelope was unfamiliar. His hands trembled as he opened it. The words were stark, clinical, written by someone he didn't know. Lucia was married. She had married a man from her village, a childhood friend. The letter offered no other explanation, just the bare, brutal fact. His world crumbled, the carefully constructed hope shattered into a million pieces. The pain was a physical blow, worse than any wound the war had inflicted. His heart broke, truly broke. There was no mending this, no gentle nurse to soothe this agony. He was alone with his grief. The promise they made, her whispered, "I will wait," it all echoed in the hollowness of his despair. Had it all been a dream? A soldier's fevered fantasy? He replayed every moment, every touch, every shared smile. It had felt so real, so true. How could it end like this, with a few cold words on a piece of paper? He never saw Lucia again, never knew why. But he held on to the memory of those few precious nights, the memory of her gentle voice, the stories of her childhood, the faint, sweet scent of jasmine. It was a bittersweet treasure, a reminder of a love that had blossomed in the darkest of times, a love that had given him the strength to live. Even though it was now a source of profound pain, he cherished it. It was all he had left of her, and it would stay with him, always.